Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. Tonight we focus on the women's agenda. Happy Women's Month to all of you that are watching us there. But also, today is Ash Wednesday for all the Christians in the Christian fraternity that are celebrating the beginning of the Lent season. And our brothers, the Muslim, also have started the Ramadan season there. But tonight we focus on the women's agenda. We look at the young ladies and the ladies there, asking ourselves patterned questions. How far has their affirmative action or the agenda for just women gone in this country? How much progress have we made, or how much regression have we made to be able to get this agenda passed? Even as we celebrate women this month, comes Saturday the 8th of March, what is the biggest question that is challenging young women and men, young women and the older ladies today, especially with all programs that have been put in place to support the women? When we look at women programs that are supporting the elder women, but also the programs to support the young girls to continue in school. Tonight, the host is Professor Sarah Sally, a director at the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at Makerere University, and you can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there, or our X platform, drop your comment there, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, or you can text us or WhatsApp us on the number 0709 60 25 92 for today. Today, I hand over to Professor to take on the show.
Good evening, viewers. The theme for Women's Day 2025. It comes following previous themes that have been there, very interesting themes. In 2022, we had gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. And in 2023, we had digital, innovative, and technology for gender equality. And last year, we had invest in women, accelerate progress. This year's theme is accelerate progress, accelerate action. And with me is an illustrious panel that is very distinguished and excellent at discussing matters of gender equality. On my immediate left, is Aikoru Patience Pony, who is a Ugandan lawyer and a youth leader with experience in advocating for gender equality, social justice, and effective participation of women and youth in leadership. She's currently working with the Austrian Embassy on governance and development cooperation in Uganda, and is a member of the EU Youth Sounding Board, where she's also the team leader on the thematic area of gender equality. You're welcome, Pony.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'm happy to be here today.
Okay, thank you. Next to her is Honorable Flavia Kalule, who is a member of Parliament of Kasanda on the NUP ticket. She's a teacher by profession. She's a politician representing the people of Kasanda, and she's also a leader of the Women's League in the National Unity Platform. You're very welcome, Honorable Flavia.
Thank you very much, Professor. Good evening, viewers. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Next to her is Honorable Sarah Opendi, who is a Ugandan accountant and politician. She's the State Minister of Mineral Development in the Ugandan Cabinet, serving since 14th December 2019. Before that, from 6th June 2016 until 14th December 2019, she served as the State Minister of Health for General Duties. You're welcome, Honorable.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure commencing the week towards the Women's Day in style.
Okay, thank you. And next to Honorable Sarah Opendi is Paulina Chiwangu. She became the UN Women Country Representative in Uganda in August 2022. Ms. Chiwangu has a doctorate in philosophy, so it should be Dr. Chiwangu, has a doctorate in philosophy and over 20 years of extensive experience in development and humanitarian work. She has served as the Deputy Country Representative with UN Women in South Sudan, and as Deputy Country Representative for UN Women Iraq Country Office, as well as head of KRG. You'll tell us what that is all about, sub-office. Before joining UN Women Iraq, she worked with UN Women Bosnia and Herzegovina as the head of gender coordination for the UNDAF, and she worked with UN Women in Serbia as interim head of office. And prior to that, she headed the UN Interagency Joint Program on Gender Equality and was acting country representative for UN Women in Uganda for 1 year. You're welcome, Dr. Chiwangu.
Thank you for having me here, and I'm really looking forward to take part in this session. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least is our very own Honorable Betty Amongi. She's the Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development in the Cabinet of Uganda as of 9th June 2021. Previously, she served as the Cabinet Minister of Kampala City, capital city, and before that, from 6th June until 14th December 2019, she served as the Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development in Uganda's cabinet. You are very welcome, Honorable Betty. Yes, thank you very much. And now that we are here, we are going to delve into the discussion. And I would like to start it from where we were all discussing before the show came on. A lot has happened globally and locally. And we are following on from the various thematic areas. Right now, this year, our key theme is accelerating gender equality, but largely accelerate action. The question now is, while we are supposed to be accelerating action, it is also coming in a global context where there's a lot of funding cuts. And so what next as a Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development? What next for the gender machinery to stay upbeat and to sustain the gains we've made over the years?
Thank you. Good evening, viewers. I want to first thank all the men out there who are gender activists and feminists, because I'm from a function organized by Her Excellency the Ambassador of Netherlands, where we have launched Women Uganda 2025 Plus, which is focusing on male champions. And we have male who have committed themselves to the cause of women. This year's Women's Day is very vital because one, we are examining the implementation of Beijing platform, because now we have made 30 years since Beijing plan of action was adopted. So when we say accelerate action for gender equality as a theme, we are saying, one, there has been action that has taken place globally, regionally, subnational and national. And so realizing and recognizing action that have been taken, which globally we now know, for instance, in Uganda, I think we now have 34% of women in parliament, 44% of women in cabinet as senior ministers, 45% of women state ministers, about 50% of women permanent secretaries. So we are saying there has been action. We are saying we have education as the foundation of any woman or girl that should succeed. We recognize the infrastructure that have been put in place by government, by our partners and civil society, that has anchored education and programming and infrastructure to deliver girls, where actually now there seems to be a call to scrap the 1.5 affirmative action, which of course I don't agree with, where people are now saying, but girls are also now doing well and better than boys in schools. Economic empowerment programs, where when you drive around this country, majority of you will stop by to buy tomatoes, to buy onions, to buy all sorts of things, with markets put all over the country for women to undertake businesses, programs of government for supporting women in business. So the leadership, the legal framework the constitution, the laws, we have over 17 gendered laws, from domestic violence to Land Amendment Act to Mortgage Act, that permits, that allows a person, a spouse, to only mortgage a property with the consent of the spouse, defining matrimonial property, issues of FGM, trafficking in persons, sexual and gender-based violence law, Succession Act. The laws are there, the policy are there. So we are saying we have this, the constitution, the laws, the legal framework, the institutional framework, the Ministry of Gender as the gender mechanism that should coordinate all efforts, the Equal Opportunities Commission, the Human Rights Commission. Each of the MDAs are supposed to have gender desk in their ministry. Now, no government budget can pass in Parliament without you passing the benchmark of being issued with the gender compliance certificate, gender equity compliance certificate. So we are saying actions have been taken right from 1985, when Nairobi conference took place and the women came, and 1985 the Women's Day was commemorated as the first Women's Day. Up to now, those women have made strides. The women's civil society has made strides. Government has made strides. Globally, we've made strides. Now, can we accelerate? You talk about cuts, of course. Yes, financing is becoming a problem. But I also recognize that majority of the actions at national level are budget oriented. So it must be each of the government that has the mandate to deliver on gender equality, equity, and address gender rights that are supposed to ensure that we prioritize women's issue, girls' issue. So while our partners are having budget cuts, we have recognized, but we have also recognized that it is time that we say we should stand on our 2 feet as government and say we have now the foundation. Can we now complete this house? Yeah. And roof it and tile it with our resources? And this comes at a time when government of Uganda is saying we are moving into the middle income economy. Our GDP is growing. Our macroeconomic and microeconomic policies must address everybody. So I see that our theme is contextualized within the global context, but also national context, and I hope that we will join hands and continue to ensure that we accelerate action for gender equality.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So we now go to, well, I don't know, Your Excellency, we don't really know the titles of UN Women. You'll correct us when you start. So yes, so Dr. Chiwangu, you've heard what the Honorable Minister has said in terms of how much government has institutionalized gender equality and how the funding cuts may affect, but they will do their best. Now, the question to you is, what commitments has the government of Uganda made over time to implement the CSW outcomes, and how will UN Women support these efforts within the context of the funding cuts?
Thank you very much, Professor, for that question. Before answering that question, maybe linking to what Honorable Minister have stated, I think it's important to note that this year, 2025, is a year of milestones. We have 5 years before delivering the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have 25 years since the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. We have, as the Honorable Minister stated, 30 years since Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So when coming back to CSW, I think all of us know that CSW is the status of women, is the principal global intergovernmental body which exclusively dedicated to promotion of gender equality. So there are two outcome areas which I would like to mention, which the government of Uganda have really taken to heart to implement. First is the outcome that focuses on the 2030 agenda, which the outcome says it needs to be implemented in a comprehensive manner, reflecting its universality. And the government of Uganda have taken that. The government of Uganda, you know, we have the SDG Secretariat at the Office of the Prime Minister. And there we have all the plans and everything, and the government of Uganda, we are working with them very closely to make sure that Agenda 2030 is implemented in full. And as I said, we still have 5 years to go. Last year, we had a midterm review, and according to the outcome of the midterm review, Uganda was not doing very bad comparing to other countries. So we are working shoulder to shoulder with the Minister of Government, with the Minister of Gender on behalf of all the government bodies. Then I also want to look at the outcome on achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women through the implementation of the Beijing Declaration Platform of Action. As I said, this year we are commemorating 30 years since Beijing Platform of Action. And you know we have 12 critical areas for Beijing Plan of Action. So the government of Uganda, we have worked together, and they have been among the government's bodies which have submitted the report, assessment of how the country have been doing since 2020 to 2025. And there have been quite a lot of progress. Some of the progress is what Honorable Minister have stated. This year, from the 10th, some representative, including the minister, they will go to New York, where all member states will be convening and look at this implementation of some of this outcome. And we, as UN Women, we had regional meetings where we had a representation from the Minister of Gender in Addis, and everybody was speaking highly about the representation of the Minister of Gender. They really took a leadership role, and everybody was proud of them, and they really encouraged us to make sure that we have a team from Uganda going to New York to attend CSW and make sure that the conclusions, the agreement, are fully implemented and agreeable. Because when you have a member state coming from all over the world, you really need to focus, you really need to understand what are these conclusions, what are these agreed conclusions. And the Minister of Gender leading the government here really have showed the example that they can represent this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next to our Honorable Sarah Pendi, and I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question. You've had the great achievements that the Minister of Gender said that we have made in leadership, in education, in trade. You're a Minister of State for Minerals Development. One question around there, how are women faring in the mineral sector? But in addition to that, I also wanted to know, as parliamentarians, you heard the minister speak about the Gender Equity Compliance Certificate. What are you as Parliament doing to ensure that the money saved through the PFMA Act is put to the right use? Because I was told allocation is not enough. So after you have safeguarded and issued the Equity Compliance Certificate, what happens? Do you follow up? Do you track? So two, how are women faring in the mineral sector? And as Parliament, what are you doing to ensure that the money from the Equity Compliance Certificate that is allocated is actually put to the right use?
Thank you very much. Maybe just a correction so that my younger sister, who I call the younger bulldozer, the Honorable Nyamtoro, does not imagine that there was a reshuffle this night. And I have taken over her position. Yes, I was Minister of State for
in
mineral development.
Yes.
Yeah, that is past.
That was in the past.
Yes, that was in the past. But allow me, first of all, before I really answer your question,
Yes.
to appreciate the NRM government, led by His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni, for actually ratifying the CEDAW. We are talking about the Beijing Plan of Action, but let us know where all this started. Because for me, the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women,
yeah.
that convention was actually I must say, that should be our Bible, where everything else started. Because remember, this was a decision made by member states way back in 1979, and Uganda as a country ratified this convention in 6 years later. That was 1985, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, 1985. And after ratifying this, it was not until the 1995 Constitution that we really had now a piece of legislation that recognized or provided for women. So it's like we picked what was in CEDAW and simply transplanted it into the 1995 Constitution. So we must appreciate the government, because maybe some of us would not be here. As you can see in Parliament today, the women that run for the direct seats, only 15 have managed to make it to Parliament, implying that it is still a tall order for a woman to run for a direct seat and actually win. So we need to appreciate that provision that was put to provide for the women, at least one woman per district, because that has brought into Parliament an additional 146 women out of the number that is there. So if that was not there, we would only have 15 women in Parliament. So I want to appreciate the government for that and providing this space, although I keep complaining. Every time a decision is made, we have to wear a gender lens, which should not arise. Because if you recognize that women are today educated, that women are able, and we have women educated in different fields, why should we have to, you know, every other time wear that gender lens? You know, there was a promotion of police officers recently by the president. I think it was in December. All those promotions were men. Unfortunately, we were in recess. I really wanted to run with it to make noise, but I didn't know where to make the noise from. So I just left it to pass. By the time we resumed, well, it was gone. And so for me, that still remains an issue, that we still have to struggle to actually find our space into these decision-making bodies. Now, you have asked me 2 questions. The women in mining, while I was in the mining sector, but of course, even now, I at least know what is going on. Unfortunately, majority of the women in the mines are doing the donkey work, you know, because most of the people that are actually in the mining sector are actually using rudimentary methods of mining. And for example, if I may give the case of gold mining, you'll find the women doing, other than the cooking, providing food, they are into, you know, using mercury to try and get the gold, using the rudimentary method. Most of them are actually women and men. So they are not, we don't have women yet who are actually owning the mines. So I think in that sector is still a sector that we are not yet there. We don't have skilled people, especially, you know, we don't have women with adequate resources to actually do the, first of all, even the exploration before they get into the mining. So it's still a gray area for the women. While we might have women who are actually educated and women who might have some resources, the mining sector needs quite a huge amount of money. So we are not yet there. We are into artisanal mining, but even the artisanal mining, we have few women. Now, the other issue that you have asked me is about the gender and equity certificate. We must appreciate that, like the minister said, there is no budget for any ministry, department, or agency that can be passed without that certificate accompanying it. And I must appreciate that most of the ministries, departments, and agencies actually do ensure that they comply with that requirement for the gender and equity certificate. However, as to the implementation and also what I have been observing is that when there are budget cuts, you find that they cut the budget without critically looking at those particular provisions for the gender and equity certificate. And that is an area that I have asked the Equal Opportunities Commission, because that is really their focus area, to actually also interest themselves, because they normally release reports, and with us we rely on their reports to actually hold the government accountable. So they've been giving us very good reports as to which ministries are doing well, which ministries are not complying with this certificate, and the performance of each ministry. However, when it comes to the budget cuts and how that has affected the previous planning, that the GCE does not come easily. So it's still a gray area, and I hope that maybe this year, since we've been raising it, I think we raised it about a year ago, I believe within this year we should be able to see how that happens. But also when it comes supplementary funding, supplementary requests by the ministries, departments, and agencies, equally we don't look at that. So that is something that we must now interest ourselves in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. So we come to you, Honorable Karule. As a woman leader, aware of the current situation and challenges facing the global women's movement, what advice do you give government as they struggle to keep up with the gender machinery, or as they struggle to keep the gender machinery functional? Because I think when it comes to gender, regardless of the party, there are gender issues. So from the other side, how do you see it, and what do you advise?
Thank you very much, Professor. And I want to appreciate my fellow panelists for the insights that they have given us and the information with regarding the acceleration of gender equality in Uganda. And I would want to say that as a country, we have achieved to some extent some gender parity, although we still have certain challenges therein that bring forth your question. And since Uganda has since surpassed the threshold of 30% for gender parity in leadership, in a scale of so many, as the minister has stated. But, and I want to also add my voice to Honorable Sarah's for ratifying the CEDAW, which has brought us where we are. And this year we are also reviewing the 30th Beijing Platform for Action. Those are all very good strides. We have a number of women in leadership. We have women in economic spheres and that are working. There are so many programs that the government has put in place to ensure that women and girls are able to, become economically independent, but also health-wise, etc. It's good progress. However, I feel we still have a lot to do as a country. We are not yet at the gender parity that we are always looking for. And I think that's where we have to put our focus on. For example, the numbers that Honorable Sarah, if I am to start from there, has talked about leadership or in Parliament, or even some that the minister highlighted, of the women in these spaces, which are really incredible, because I think for the first time we have that high number of members, over 30% of women in leadership positions, very close to almost Rwanda, which is leading in East Africa of members of women in leadership spaces. I think we are yet to see these numbers. For me, that's where the key element is translating into actual influence and actual livelihoods improving for women. Why am I saying this? Is if we have women, prime minister, speaker, ministers, etc., and they're in these key influential positions, I would by automatically think the rural woman would be able to enjoy these positions. So they would be trickling down this leadership straight to them. But we still have challenges we are grappling with, and some of those challenges I am very much aware don't even culminate from these women themselves. Some of them are patriarchal settings within which they operate. Some of them are systemic challenges which they are trying to operate in. And so that's where, for me, I find the challenge, that we have women in positions of power, but sometimes are rendered powerless. And they themselves sometimes acknowledge that they can't make the actual changes that they would want, or they can't be able to influence as much as they would want. Because we have a patriarchal setting where the big man has to first approve, and then after the approval, that's what is done. Otherwise, we wouldn't be, squabbling with some of the issues now we are squabbling with. For example, I would advise government, when we look at the high cost of gender-based violence, at this day and age, where we have all these women in these leadership positions, really would not have any woman that is still being beaten. There would be very few, if any, that are still undergoing gender-based violence. But you find that even in the political sphere which we are in, gender-based violence against women in elections is still very high. You find that you still have percentages, in fact, after the COVID lockdown, that's when, during the COVID lockdown, that's when we experienced the highest levels of gender-based violence. And it was reported that in the entire East Africa, Uganda had the worst case scenarios of gender-based violence that are close to 15%. You still have women, you still have young girls that are dropping out of school due to, and I would say this, which is very unfair, because and that's why I'm telling you these numbers are not translating into the tangible livelihoods, improved livelihoods for women. That if you have a minister of education that is a woman, automatically you'd think it would be an easy toll for her to advocate and allocate resources, if she wanted, to things as small as sanitary pads for girls, to curb on the number of women, of girls that are dropping out of what? Schools. But you have a minister who is still taking her time saying, oh, but you see, they can use ABCD. She's speaking leisure-fairly.
But they did actually launch some initiatives in that direction?
Yes, they did launch the initiatives. And I'm saying, but the initiatives are not trickling down, ideally, to the last girl.
Okay,
because
so if you are to capture power, how would you do it differently?
Of course, how would we do it differently is the different strategies we are always giving them. One, you need to finance gender priorities. And that has always been our biggest query. What do I mean by this? The cost of GBV currently, as we speak, is too high, about 15% on the GDP effect of GBV alone on the GDP of Uganda. Now, if we put finances to reducing gender-based violence cases, this would help. How? Put up shelters. I know that there are some shelters that have been done by civil society organizations. I'd want to see a government shelter. I know Sedovi, Mifumi, those organizations are doing a lot of work on it around gender-based violence. What has the government done? Because our key aim is to allocate resources to this. But every time this comes into Parliament, we never have the budget for it. The other thing is, can we, for the compounding?
Yes, you can. Yes, please.
Well, I do appreciate the point that Honorable Flavia is raising, the issue of sanitary pads. But I just wanted to find out from Honorable Flavia. You are aware that we had a challenge that girls initially were not going to school.
Yes.
And even later when, government came up with the universal primary education program, it was 4 children in a family. Yes. 4. Now, we all know that the fertility rate in Uganda has been quite high, with some families having 10, 12 children. And where you find a polygamous man, he may have even 15 school-going children, and they may be in primary. So now, government could not, how do you pick the 4?
Out of the 15.
Out of the 15. So at the end of the day, all the children are allowed to go to school. Now, if government is taking care of all these children in primary, UP, under the UPE, would you prioritize the capitation grant for all these children, or you would go into sanitary pads? Where would be the priority? Would it not be to allow all to go to school? But also, secondly, we are aware that we have a government policy that says a primary school per parish, at least a primary school per parish. We had parishes that did not have primary schools, and government has slowly, over the years, been constructing these schools to ensure that at least children do not walk long distances to school, because in walking long distances, the girls are the ones that are affected the most, because they have a lot of temptations along the way. So would you prioritize infrastructure development in these parishes, or would you put money into sanitary pads? I know it's an issue, but which is the priority of the priorities?
Thank you,
So let
Honorable
us not,
Sarah.
and I'm sure, Honorable Flavia, even if you were to sit in that office, you would find it difficult to push certain things that you want to push.
Honorable
Because
Sarah.
we'll find so many competing priorities, and you have to pick the priority of the priorities.
Because the budget
So
will never
let
be
us,
enough.
yes. So let us not.
Honorable
let
Sarah,
us not.
while I appreciate your point of view,
Yeah,
no,
Rwanda
yeah.
for that.
while I appreciate your point of view, and you're talking about prioritizing, that's in fact wonderful, because we would put our priorities on the people-centered, our priorities would be largely people-centered. Why do I say that this government doesn't put largely people-centered priorities? You know very well that in Parliament, we passed a budget we increased a budget for health.
Which is people-centered.
Which is people-centered, because we are looking at what you're talking about. Health centers per sub-county, bringing services closer to the people, ambulances, etc., etc., including so many other things. Very largely people-centered. And what did this government do? Why I say that they don't have their priorities straight, and they are wasting a lot of taxpayers' money on things that are not relevant. 300 billion shillings was found immediately and given to ROCO. Yet we have just 42 billion shillings we need for these sanitary pads. Just that. I know it may not be sustainable, but can we start from somewhere while we teach these young girls how to make those sanitary pads for themselves? 42 billion was all that the government needed.
Yes, the Minister
And
of
300
Gender,
billion was good.
Honorable
Addendums, first wait, let me first respond to her. Addendums corrigenders are always coming into Parliament, seeking for additional money. Into what? Additional money which we get, and it's always going into private people. And then we leave the services that are required for the people unaccounted for and unfunded. So for me, I think it's not a matter of priorities, because we have priorities. And if we are in government, we would have our priorities set. It's a matter of priorities that are not being prioritized by this government right now.
I think what Honorable Sarah Pendi was really
is.
talking about is, when you're heading a state, you have a duty to either prioritize the current consumption, or you prioritize the future, which is production. But we have a Minister of Gender.
And Professor, that's where I would say that we need to put our priorities in place.
I really wanted to let the viewers understand that Uganda is not alone
in this matter,
in the issue of women's empowerment.
Yes.
And that there are rankings, there are global rankings that are given globally. And Uganda is, I think, among the top 20, is among the top 20 in the achievement of gender issues. When you are running a state, there are so many issues that will come as priority. As a Minister of Gender, when I sit in that Ministry of Gender, I am looking at judging between empowering women through giving them affordable capital that will empower them, education, skilling for the school dropouts, ensuring that pregnant girls are supported through the budget. And I want to re-echo that post-COVID, the Minister of Education had to bring in cabinet key policies. Number one, to allow girls to sit exam even when they are pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah. And we
Number
advocated
two,
for that, which was good.
To scale up skilling for those who are pregnant and had dropped out,
Yes.
including the presidential hubs that are 19 that have skilled all these girls.
Yeah.
Now, if the minister, because the state is not run with only one sector,
No.
if we have a basket of 100 billion and you want to say, I need to make roads, I need to extend power, I need to keep peace and security, I need to ensure that all these issues are tackled, and you are a country that still cannot stand on your two legs, you are then forced to say, how do I balance? For the women, for me, when I sit in that cabinet, I am arguing like her in cabinet. But my cabinet colleagues will say, while you want us to put money, maybe in buying sanitary pads, if we put that money in sanitary pads, then we are going to make sure that we are going to say cheap capital is not necessary, or is not for this financial year, cannot happen. So now it is up to us, the women in cabinet, to say, if money is not enough, and I want to tell you in that cabinet, if women were not putting their foot down, where now we have PDM, 30% reserved for women, that came from the women. 30% reserved for this, those came from women. But there are issues that we say, let the parents, and this is where I want to go, we should not look at government as a solution for everything.
Yeah.
No. A sanitary pad when you give birth to your children, and government says, for these 5 years, our envelope cannot afford to give your child milk at school, but we are able to pay for school fees, we are able to construct a dormitory for girls,
Yeah.
and the infrastructure is set, then you as a parent should now work hard to make sure that the infrastructure is there, you're not paying school fees, at least struggle. We should also not, maybe if she was arguing that let's look at the very poor and ratio and do disaggregated data, there I will say, okay, let's look at that. But to say, you're saying sanitary pads for all when there is limitation in the budget.
Okay.
If there was budget, honorable colleague, this shelter you are talking about, as a ministry, we are the one who will tell the people that we want intervention for shelter. At the moment, we are partnering with Austrian government to prioritize sexual gender-based violence cases. If you go to DPP office now, those cases are prioritized and they're heard and they're disposed of.
Yeah.
So it's priority within priorities.
Actually,
and for women to say which are the top 5 critical ones that we need to push for this year. Yes. Next year we look at another priority.
Yeah, I think what you're raising is very important because it introduces 2 ways of looking at gender issues. Do we focus on the practical or do we focus on the structural drivers which make the practical occurs? And that's why I hear you right, where you say, while you may provide the path, but you can also talk about empowering parents to be able to provide these things, and hence the PDMs and everything.
Exactly.
So we are now going to bring on a younger person. So as a younger person, from where you stand, you're a gender justice advocate. Since we're already talking about priorities, what are your priorities, at least 5, like the minister has said, to sustain the gender gains amongst the global challenges?
Thank you so much,
Quickly.
Professor Sarah and the panelists here. Well, I've listened to the amazing progress that has been shared. Every time we think about the International Women's Day, I am inspired to reflect on the journey we have come from and also look at where we are now, the Gen Zs, as they call us, and what we want to do in the next years to come. And of course, just like you've asked, really, there are a number of priorities, just like the panelists have highlighted. I just want to add on what Honorable Flavia also mentioned, that yes, in addition to the good work that is being done, with the education that is there, we still have the structural challenges that are there. If we want to push for education, which we are appreciating, and we're saying, yes, so many girls have actually taken up education, but then we're seeing that girls have 2.5 times of dropping out rate compared to the boys, or 90% of the girls that go to secondary school do not complete. So we need to look back at the drawing table. What exactly is missing there? What is the missing link? Is it that we've seen media publishing articles, government has given up on the schools, or public schools are not helping and whatnot? Are we benchmarking enough? This is the time to benchmark. As Dr. Paulina said, this is a year of milestones. So are we able to benchmark on countries that are also giving out free sanitary towels in public schools or in private schools? And just like the Honorable Minister said, are we able to prioritize the rural people, those that are in most need, as a pilot study to see whether it is going to be sustainable? So that is among the priorities that we need to see. The second other priority that I'm very passionate about is holistic approach to access to justice. Professor Sally, just like the Minister has mentioned, the Austrian government, where I happen to work in the governance department, has been working with the government, with UN Women, you know, in trying to mainstream and holistically ensure that we institutionalize gender equality. The project that the Honorable Minister was speaking about was in line with institutionalizing daily hearings of gender-based violence cases, meaning that these cases are very many and clogged up as a case backlog. But then our priority, or even my priority as an individual, as a young leader, is to see that most of these cases are disposed of in the years to come, that even when this project is not there, as we started at the beginning, we spoke about the funding crisis, that the government is able to take on such programs, that when Austria is not there, Netherlands is not there, we do not have the US funding, we are able to continue with our programs, and the Ministry of Gender is able to thrive. But also, really, as I get to my conclusion, the other priority as a young person, speaking from the perspectives of the young women and girls out there, is that we want to see more pulse in the kind of leadership we have. Yes, we celebrate 34% of the women in leadership, many getting, and so many in the next election. Professor Sally, you're going to see more than 50% of young people with posters wanting to challenge so many other people that are probably already in those seats. So can we prioritize the kind of pulse of leadership that we have, that in as much as we have, yes, a vice president who is female, we have so many of these female leaders that we have. They are doing very great work, but some of them who are not on this panel might be sleeping on the job. But as young people, we want to gain inspiration from that in order to actually take on the mantle in the next years to come. If we are celebrating another set of Beijing years, you know, some of us are going to be the ones now on the spotlight. What are we going to say? What did I learn from Honorable Minister, from Honorable Sarah, from Honorable Flavia, or from Professor Sarah Sally? So in conclusion, really, the young people's priorities are around that, but also seeing the structural challenges being addressed, especially with what we're facing in the 21st century. I am sure you're very aware, I think just 2 years ago or last year, the International Women's Day was around the topic of technology and innovation, which is a big challenge that young people are facing. We're either misusing it to break ourselves and the entire government that is yet to come, or the different sectors that are there, or we are using it to build and participate actively in the money economy, to be able to empower women and ensure value chain addition. As young people, that is something we need to look at. We complain, we have gone through university, the 1.5 points, then we're back to sit with our graduation gowns and transcripts. We have nowhere to go, because there are certain skills that we need to adapt, that even the government programs like the parish development model, giving money, you know, to the community to ensure they get some startup capital, are able to realize the proceeds of these programs? Do we have holistic ways of empowering women and girls in our communities, especially economically, not just giving them the money, because we do not know whether they will think the money is a political gift, or it is Christmas money, or they will go shopping and even leave the country because they want to travel and enjoy, especially the young people. So are we able to show them that there is something more beyond the money that is given, that we are holistically taking them up to the end goal and not leaving them hanging, in order to see the actual pulse of the work that we're doing? So that is basically it from me, Professor Sally, about the priorities.
Okay, briefly, what does the future look like for you?
Well, the future for me as a young person is promising, because we are fueled with a lot of energy that does not come from just the air, but energy that is derived from the women that were there before us, the good progress that we have already acknowledged on this panel, and many that are aware of. But then for us, the future looks like a time where Uganda is able to be on the same platforms like South Africa, Scotland, in as far as providing free sanitary towels in public schools in the rural areas, but also the future in seeing that beyond the legislations that are shelved in Parliament, all these amazing policies that we keep speaking about in international platforms is is implemented to the grassroots, to the very last person. That yes, we sensitize people, but does that one person go back? Are they confident enough to speak up for themselves? But also, yet still, the future that I hope to see as a young person is one where our institutions are empowered to handle things, just like the Honorable Minister said, that we're able to now house, to put sofa chairs, to put tiles in our houses with the support that we have gotten from development partners. So I think that is the future I want to see, and I believe with young people taking the mantle or accelerating the action for gender equality and knowing the role we have to play, not just in a collection, but as an individual. When you get back home, when you're with a neighbor that is being beaten, what is your role that you're playing before even the police comes, before the minister who might be in New York somewhere comes to intervene? What is your role in your community? Or before, as I conclude, before we call the government every time, government etuyambe, government etuyambe, you know, what are we able to do in nation building? Yes.
Okay, thank you. And maybe back to Honorable Flavia. As opposition women leaders, what are you bringing to the table?
Women leaders, of course, we have a lot to bring to the table, but I want to first talk about the digital influence that we have currently and how low so many female people are on this digital literacy, because we really don't know. We still have, first of all, we still have so many women who don't even own phones, and moving globally, and we are all on the phones. We are conducting plenty of businesses using phones. We are conducting so much, you know, since lockdown. Places locked down so many employers and so employees. So right now we have so many people that are working home and online, but we also have plenty of online violence there. So the digital literacy levels need to also be fastened better. But what do we bring on board as the opposition? Of course, as the opposition, first of all, we bring a lot of hope to this country, because one, we understand that there are certain things, systems are broken down. We understand that, let me just give an example of the violence that we see currently. Just before we came in here, we are talking
what
about
you're bringing on table.
And that's what I'm bringing, and that's what I'm discussing currently. And just that, the mere fact that a woman can contest on an opposition seat in this country is already a lot of courage. Because when you look at the context in which we operate, that alone would intimidate every woman known to enter the opposition. But the fact that we still have some of us who are still in these spaces, advocating for change in that space, advocating for better leadership in that space, that means that there's a lot of hope in there that we are yet to bring. Secondly, as opposition, we have a number of priorities that we would look at. For example, we'd want to look at the women's health as a key concern. And that is something that, given the chance, would have at least endeavored that we would move from our budget from the 7.9% that currently it has as a government to allocate more resources, at least to move towards the 15% Abuja declaration that was shared. Why? If we could have a national insurance scheme where every person can easily walk into a health center and attain the health services that they need, that would be a plus for us. If I could have less women giving birth on the floors, I would be very happy with myself if I were in government. If I could have more women who are not dying out of maternal health issues due to low blood or no blood in a facility. Currently, we just have very few facilities that have blood ready at hand for any woman that's giving birth. That would be something that would bring on table. If we would have more women, instead of this 180 billion that is given to the president as presidential donations of envelopes, if we would allocate that money currently, we are talking about priorities, if we would allocate that money.
We were talking about what you are bringing on the table.
And that's what I'm talking
not
to
what
you.
you are reallocating.
No, that's what I'm talking to you about, Sarah, if you can listen carefully. Because the 180 billion that's currently there, presidential envelopes, would scrap it and bring that 180 billion into saving more women in health centers, into prioritizing women's education in there. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at in order to close the gender gaps they are in.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to Honorable Sarah Opendi. And largely, when you look at the data profile of Uganda, we have a lot of data on how well we are doing on the case of leadership. So that's why we can talk about there are so many women in leadership because of affirmative action. We should even scrap affirmative action. We have that kind of data. But when it comes to tracking data on labor force participation, tracking data on trade, tracking data on very many other things, it seems to be missing. So I want to understand, for you as a person in Parliament and in government, what role does data and evidence play in tracking progress and ensuring accountability?
Before I can answer that, allow me to, you were asking how much she's bringing on the table.
Yes.
And I just want to say that women are women, irrespective of whether they belong to the opposition. So on matters concerning women, we all speak one language. And if it is health, we speak the same. If it is education, we all advocate for the girl child. And normally when we have motions to do with women or girls, for example, the motion after COVID, we had quite a number of girls that got pregnant, and we tabled that motion to really urge government to see how to, you know, specifically skill some of those who may not be willing to proceed with education. It was supported by, you know, all. There is normally no opposition. So I just wanted to make that. And now getting back to data, of course, data is very important. It helps us in planning. When you have data, you can actually, it helps you to make decisions better. But just like you have said, we have a challenge in having, you know, correct data. And I think this is the task that that's why we need to empower the Equal Opportunities Commission. And that's why some of us were thinking that maybe for now we could leave the Equal Opportunities Commission because they are building capacity. And if we had rationalized it, it may get lost somewhere and some people may lose their jobs and the focus may not be on what they are doing now. So it's quite important for us to ensure that this particular commission, the Equal Opportunities Commission, is actually adequately, not just funded, but adequately staffed, because on matters of gender issues, and even when we are talking about the gender and equity certificate, which I had talked about earlier, most people do not understand this, because even when you go to local government and you ask them that in budgeting, please ensure that you have the gender lens. And when we are talking about gender lens, we are not talking about women alone. We are talking about the youths, all the vulnerable groups. So you find that people don't understand what is actually meant by this gender and equity budgeting. So there is still a lot of capacity that needs to be done, and there is still a lot of work that needs to be done around data. So how I wish that the Uganda Bureau of Statistics can actually, you know, have all this data that we need available, but also make sure that the data is shared, because sometimes they have the data and it's kept somewhere. You may not readily come across it. It's not until you are doing something then they say, but this information is available. But how many people down there, for example, if you move to local government, know about or can access the data that we're talking about? So it's important that UBOS regularly, just like we do with other programs. Give statistics. Whenever we are talking about issues, now we are talking about, you know, women's issues, women's rights, and so on. You both should be coming out also to join the conversation by releasing data concerning women maybe that access health services, releasing data on how many girls from the last statistics are in school, how many girls have graduated and in which courses. So that data, you know, yeah, they should join the conversation. They should not be there in their offices with their data. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're going to take a few comments and then have a break and then continue with the panel. For example, we have a comment from Andrew from Kisoro. Is talking about, first of all, is appreciating the panel, but saying, unfortunately, listening to the Honorable Minister and the Doctor for UN Women talking about policy, it does not trickle down. And he's asking how we can ensure that the good things you're talking about there can trickle down. Kisoro is found somewhere in southwestern Uganda. There was Beth from Mumbale who was talking about asking whether Dr. Chiwangu is Ugandan because you are her role model. Then we also have Henry from Kabanyoro and things. Well, Honorable, thanks for the program as we celebrate another ritual of Women's Day every 8th of March. And as I watch the views of women on the panel, we are not addressing the women's issues. The so-called rural women, they are alleging they stand for, are doing much more than they are doing. Here is the problem. Educated women in cities whose parents struggle to educate and pay fees, and then they settle to be housewives by choice, to succumb to their husbands. So saying, what do you comment about that? Then we have another comment. Yeah, I think we saw that one. Thank you for the program, and everybody. I hope the program will not turn out to be a political ground. Otherwise, my concern is that I can see and listen in the program. I think where we have gone wrong is to think that when discussing about women's issues as one of the aspects of gender, men should not be involved. My view is that men need to be in that panel since women are part of women's lives. Right. Or maybe meant to say men are part of women's life, except unless the panel is talking about women. That is his concern. Then we have, yeah, I think we saw that. Good evening, Prof. HIV prevalence is on the rise in Uganda. Women's empowerment that isn't guided is one of the contributing factors because it's fueling GBV in families. It has replaced gender roles and women's submission in marriages. Well, we talked about structural and practical drivers of these things. So women leaders, if you don't guide this kind of empowerment, husbands will run away from your authority, get infected from those who are not empowered, and then they will infect you. The Honorable Minister will have something to say about this when we return. Then on the issue of funding gender-based programs, that's awesome. However, have you checked out the number of crimes reported at police of women whose wealth has been stolen? Women killed, etc. by men. All the programs are awesome, but as long as men and children are not on board, it will appear as women against men agenda, however good it might be. Okay, and then lastly, I'm excited to join the women empowerment, and I'm just here enjoying watching the panel. So, of course, he goes on to ask where he can find an empowered woman because he's still single. So we shall stop it here for now, for a few minutes, so we go for break. And when we return, we shall begin that side to address some of these things because they are largely around the structural drivers. Yeah. And we shall start from there when we return. Thank you very much.
Osmosis again. Osmosis tried to pay. Money wasn't enough. He checked every pocket. Money wasn't enough. Osi, we're sorting it. With the momo, we're sorting it. Osmosis checked again. Money still not enough. He looked everywhere.
Hey, but Chief, what is going on?
Osi, we're sorting it. With the momo, we're sorting it.
With your
money is not enough, we're sorting it with MTN Momo. Use the Momo app or dial *165 *5# to add call with Momo Advance and pay bills, send money or buy bundles.
International Women's Day is celebrated annually on 8th March. It is a time to reflect on progress made, to call for change and to celebrate acts of courage and determination play by women. On Saturday, 8th March, Uganda will join the rest of the world to commemorate International Women's Day. The national celebrations will be held in Changwanzi district under the theme Accelerate Action for Gender Equality. The President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, will be the chief guest. Join us for the live broadcast to witness outstanding women receive medals in recognition of their achievements and contributions to the country. Happy Women's Day.
This PDM is to get all of you out of poverty. That's why we said 100 million per parish per year.
The parish development model is designed to eradicate poverty by providing the support necessary for financial independence.
We have seen how how much 1 million can do. The whole of Uganda is very rich. So what you call poverty is actually ignorance. We need everybody to come up.
Let us all take advantage of the conducive prevailing atmosphere of political stability, peace and security to ensure that all our people come out of poverty.
And I've told the banks to stop deducting from the 1 million. You must get the 1 million full. The government is the one which will pay the bank charges.
Now the number of stools in this Matoke enterprise are 1,000. They are on 1 acre. And we harvest 17 bunches every day. The money that we get from this matoke, after selling each bunch at 15,000 shillings, for the whole year, we get 91.9 million shillings. So I want to encourage all the people of Teso also to change the mindset and adopt to new crops which were not traditionally grown here.
We emphasize 2 words, wealth and jobs. This PDM is to get all of you out of poverty.
This message is brought to you by the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance.
International Women's Day is celebrated annually on 8th March. It is a time to reflect on progress made, to call for change and to celebrate acts of courage and determination play by women. On Saturday, 8th March, Uganda will join the rest of the world to commemorate International Women's Day. The national celebrations will be held in Changwanzi district under the theme Accelerate Action for Gender Equality. The President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, will be the chief guest. Join us for the live broadcast to witness outstanding women receive medals in recognition of their achievements and contributions to the country. Happy Women's Day.
Okay, welcome back from that break, where we have enjoyed the discussion of the first session so far. We had a number of questions raised largely for the Minister and the UN Women Country Representative, and we are going to give each of them a chance to respond to these questions. And as we shall begin with Dr. Chiwango, as you respond to some of the comments we read, we would also like you to speak to the innovative and transformative strategies that have been successful in other countries that we could adopt as a country.
Thank you so much, Professor. Sarah, before I respond to the comments from the panelists, I just want to pick on the few discussions that we had in the previous session. You asked Honorable Sarah about data, and this morning, I think it was in the afternoon, we had a program with UBOS where they launched they launched the training manuals and mentorship program, and it was really these manuals and the training, the mentorship program were very effective. They've been developed by very good colleagues. So what I want to say, the government have, data is key for decision making. So I think it was really a good question to ask. And I think one of the things which came up this afternoon was what gets measured gets done. If you don't measure, then it's very unlikely that it can get done. And then this morning, we were at the media center because we had a press release for International Women's Day. And one of the things which came up is the economic cost of GBV in Uganda, which stands approximately at $20 million US per year. And this translates to 71 billion Uganda shillings. Because there were discussion here about GBV before we went on break, so I think I wanted to pick on that. But also, I think it was Honorable Flavia or my sister there, Aikoni, who talked about the digital gap. And when I mentioned before that this year is a year of milestone, and one of which is Beijing plus 30. And there are quite a number of areas, 6 areas that have been agreed on the roadmap for Beijing plus 30. And the first one is bridge the digital gap. So at least there are efforts and also their acknowledgement that we really need to bridge the digital gap. Coming back to the question, I think the comment from listeners, one of which was they asked me if I'm a Ugandan, and I'm very Ugandan. I am from next door, I'm from Tanzania. And then there was a question about all these things that we are talking about, how can they trickle down to the community? We have quite a number of programs where they are not all centered at the national level. Everything that we do goes down to the communities. For instance, I'll give you an example of our program on women, peace and security. We have a component of localization of women, peace and security. We know member states develop their own national action plan for the implementation of 1325, which I mentioned before, that we are celebrating 25 years this year. So this goes all the way down to the communities, and the local government have really taken it on. We have about 13 districts which have developed their own national action plans for the district, which are full costed and so on. And we have women's group that we work with at the community level, women movement at the grassroots level. So we make sure that whatever we do at the national level goes all the way to the grassroots. Yes, then I think you asked me a question about innovation, transformative strategies. there are quite a number of innovative strategies that we can learn from other countries outside Uganda. I know quite a lot of countries come to Uganda to learn a lot of things, but there are things that Uganda also can learn from other countries. I just want to give a few examples. The first one is Mexico. Mexico have developed National Institute for Women, which has established a national fund for women. And this supports gender equality and women empowerment through various programs. We were discussing during the first session the challenges that we are seeing on the elimination of funds, that the traditional funding, the traditional donors who are funding us, now we are experiencing a lot of change in the current context. We all know we have seen these shifts, you know, which have been going on for a while now, and now it's like we are reaching the climax. So if we have this kind of national fund for women, I think this can really help to enhance, to make sure that women have, and this fund is funded by, of course, the government, development partner, and the UN. They put this fund together for gender equality and women empowerment. Another example that I want to give is from Ethiopia. Ethiopia, it's not far from Uganda, and they have one-stop centers for gender-based violence survivors. We know here in Uganda, gender-based violence is still a challenge. Earlier on, I mentioned, just a few minutes ago, I mentioned the cost of GBV. But what I didn't say is, for instance, physical violence. In Uganda, we are at 51%, which is way high comparing to the rest of Africa, where the average percentage for Africa is about 37%. But Uganda, we are at 51 point something percent. Therefore, if we establish something similar to what Ethiopia is doing, this one-stop center for gender-based violence survivors, it was established and it caters for quite a number of services. It offers psychosocial services, it offers medical services, it offers legal services, and also helping survivors to recover and also to seek justice. So these are some of the examples that I can give, innovative examples where our neighbor, for instance, here in Ethiopia, or what we have, the fund in Mexico, I think those can be something that we can learn here in Uganda.
Thank you very much. We now come to the Honorable Minister.
Yes.
You had most of the questions.
Yes.
The questions seem to suggest women have it all, and you're still pushing for that. But we also know that patriarchal control is a moving target. It keeps transforming itself. So what do you see as the structural drivers of these patterns, and what can we do differently? What are the structural barriers to the attainment of the rights of women, and what must be done to accelerate gender equality in Uganda?
Thank you. Let me start with probably the question of the viewers, and then I come to the question you've raised. I want to, the questions came into two dichotomy. There are those who are saying women have had it. Women HIV prevalence is now exacerbated because of women's empowerment. Women's wealth are being stolen. Are we even finding out that the empowered women, their wealth are being stolen by men? Then the first two were again the other extreme of saying, you the elitist women seated there. You are elite. You do not know what is happening. Women, what you are talking is not trickling down. But this shows you the fact that the views on women's empowerment are divergent They are diverse. The three of us seated who are politicians, we are not elite. The same women you are talking about in Kisoro, and I had a woman member of parliament, the late Sarah Nyarabashishi, who would go to the village every Saturday, despite the fact that she would drive 8 hours to go to Kisoro. And she would go to the women in rural areas. You would find her deep walking with a stick to climb those hills. I've been to Kisoro. I don't think Sarah here can wear the high heel when she's there in the village. or my colleague there, the high heel she's wearing now is going to cross when she's looking for the votes. So we might look elitist when we are seated here. But when you get me in the village talking to those women, you are actually going to realize that what we come to speak here is derived from those rural women. What informs our debate in parliament? And that is what Sarah was saying, that post-COVID, all the women in parliament, all the women in cabinet were talking about many girls got pregnant during COVID. What should we do? In parliament, it was a question. In cabinet, until we push for the Minister of Education, the First Lady, to bring that policy and move for the second chance. So I want the viewers and those who raise question that Women's Day, we are late, these things are not trickling to the rural areas. At least we are watching His Excellency, the President, in his tour, going to villages to look at the parish development model, and majority of the data we have for parish development model, more than 50% of those who are getting those monies are women. I have data in my office from microfinance institutions, Pride, from banks, DFCU, Centenary Bank. They will say, I cannot go in the village to lend to women. Vision Fund. They are in our villages. Even if the person works in Kisoro or in Mbale or where, go to any microfinance institution. You will find they are loaning to women. Why? Because they are saying women are trustworthy, they pay back, they will not run away, they cannot leave their children. So the backbone of the banking sector in this country is actually women. And I'm glad the Governor Bank of Uganda is our very good advocate. Wherever he's in cabinet, wherever he appears, anywhere, he says we must look at how to turn around investment in capital for women and the banking sector and how women are contributing to it. So I think for the listeners, Women's Day is not a ritual. It's not a ritual, because if Women's Day was not to be there, we would not be reminding ourselves and being questioned why the high data of gender-based violence, why no shelter for women, why the healthcare system not working for women. The question, we welcome the question, because we cannot also sit here as government and say everything is good. We are saying we have made strides, and we need to accelerate action to achieve, maybe if we are at 60–70%, how do we accelerate, and which are the critical areas that we now need acceleration? If we all agree, and all of us women, I think we all agree that health is critical. And so if we focus that now we have got attention to economic empowerment and education, can we now, in the next 5 years, refocus our attention to the health care, the health structure, the health system? Then we go to that. As answering your question, the structural barriers to women's empowerment, I think the first one for me is still the issue of norms, the traditional and cultural norms and religious norms. For instance, with PDM, majority, when I moved to where women are borrowing loans, the women in Muslim community will say, we cannot borrow the money. So the Muslim women, because of their religious the values and norms, they are not supposed to receive anything in a loan. The matter has been raised with HE, the president, and we are saying, now what do we do for the Muslim women? That is a structural religious norm system. When you find sometimes you have affordable capital and then you need collateral, and this is what most of the women members of parliament and the women out there raising on grow. We have this capital, it is affordable, it is only 10% per year. But then you require collateral. So women do not have collateral. By the nature that culturally they don't own land, they don't own property. And so most of the women who are in business are in the informal sector business that they have been accessing money through VSLA, voluntary saving and saving scheme, and maybe this financial institution that really allows group borrowing. Now we need to look structurally, how do we disentangle this barrier that most of these women might not have collateral? We must think hard. What do we do to ensure that that the women can borrow without collateral and pay, but have security that the bank demands? So for us, we are now thinking, do we say we guarantee the banks as government and all those? Those are structural issues, because you need that collateral before. The other issue, of course, is the issue of poverty and also lack of information. You know, most women are at home. They will wake up in the morning, they will go to the garden. From the garden, you must come back with the firewood, and you put the firewood, you light the firewood, you put the food on fire, you leave it there. The children are crying, you need to go and fetch water. Meanwhile, the man is now in the trading center. For him, after digging, he remains in the trading center. For you, all this issue is
if he digs at all, because some wake up to the trading center.
So now, for this woman who is supposed to ensure that they put food on the table, the firewood is there, water is there to be fetched maybe from 2 kilometers or so, will not find time to even go and find out what is it, what is happening. And yet, information is important for you, for women to access the services. So if we even just quantify that 20% of women have their lifestyle structured around the unpaid care work and roles, then structurally, as government, we must now say, how do we disengage women and have intervention that will allow women to reduce the workload, that can free her time, and she's able to say, if people are coming to the trading center to tell us about a program, I'm able to go. So some of these things look so simple, but they impact on empowerment of women, and of course also bureaucracy on how to access some of the programs. Sometimes within government, which for us in the ministry, we are trying to work with partners on how to, for a woman, you go to an office, they tell you, you go to CDO, you go to community development officer, they said fill a form. Now a woman filling a form to see, you sit, you wait, now you go to commercial officer. I'm telling you, those bureaucracy makes it so difficult sometimes for women to You reach an office, if we can have one structure where in that place a woman can walk in and finish everything. That's why under this project, we are trying to come up with common user space where a woman can walk in and will be able to get all the services in one spot.
Okay, thank you. I'll just read a few more comments. One, of course, we have someone called Nakandwe who wants to see the Honorable Minister and Honorable Sarah Pendi to get her a job. We have Liberty who wants Honorable Flavia to tell him how poor men can actually marry high-level women. We have Musungu James from Manafa who thinks Women's Days have become ceremonial. We had a panelist commenting on the need actually to intensify HIV awareness, arrest defilers, and improve on birth control. We have Dankunda Monica who talks about the plans for women with disabilities and how you're going to involve them in Chankwanzi because she does skilling and she has the God's Disability Skilling Center.
Okay.
We have Lawrence from Barara who talks about actually women continuing to be more powerful than men. There are quite a number of submissions which we cannot finish to exhaust, but maybe we continue to have this debate between providing practical handouts vis-a-vis structural drivers and maybe just sticking with the ministers to briefly find out what we can do for the sectors we consider low-hanging fruits. And this was a request for me from people from Arua and Vura, where the only person who got a first grade in government-aided schools, and there are 50 government-aided schools in Vura County, Arua district, and there was only one person who got a first grade, and it was a boy. And up now he has not yet reported to senior one, even when we tried to do a harambe. So the issues of poverty remain pertinent. Yet we are doing a lot to get them enrolled. So if the majority of people in such a district are having their people in government-aided schools and only one is getting a first grade and a boy, you wonder what is happening to the girls. So I don't know what we can do structurally to address that. There are issues around the AFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area. Again, it goes to, do we give people fish or do we give people a fishing rod to hunt their own fish? And these are some of the sectors people are seeing as sectors that actually can help people empower themselves so that we don't just keep crying out. So what can we do about that? And of course, there was one correction to all of us, that people in the local governments are not as ignorant and unaware as we think they are.
Exactly.
They are the source of all the data we are planning with. So they are the genesis, they are the government's data bank, and they're the genesis of the data that we are working with. So we should not assume that government planning is up here and it's not trickling down. So just to stay with you a little bit and briefly, what do you see as the actual sectors we need to activate to give people a fishing rod instead of...
Before the minister comes,
okay, please.
I do not want us to lose that point.
Yes.
The point about the
local government.
You know, you've talked about the education and the performance in that Vura, but it may not only be there. If you moved now to the countryside, I think as a result of COVID, we had so many, pupils starting school at the same time. Those who should have started could not start. Then we had a lockdown for 2 years. So those are two different, those are three different groups that should have gone to school differently. So they all got into primary one. And even those who were, say, in primary 5 had accelerated promotion and they found others there. So when you go to the countryside, there is a huge challenge in terms of the teacher-pupil ratio. And when that is not, if we do not deal with that, you will end up with the poor performance, because now the teachers cannot teach 200 children in a classroom, pupils in a classroom. You are one teacher. How will you teach them? I have schools in my district in Tororo. There is one school I went for prayers in some church, and this church is within a school. They have over 2,000 pupils with just 19 teachers. So what does that tell you? One teacher to an average of about 300 and something, 400 children. So the issue of teacher-pupil ratio has to be dealt with. The ideal is supposed to be 1 to 40, is it 40 or 45?
Yeah.
But now you have over 100, over 200. How do you expect these children to really, you know, learn properly and even understand what the teacher is talking about? Okay. And the biggest problem that we have is that the early childhood development remains an issue for the private sector. Much as we have a policy, it has not yet been, you know, operationalized. So we need to put emphasis on that and ensure that the early childhood development program is actually taken up, but also most importantly, find means and ways of dealing with the teacher-pupil ratio. That's why I had an issue with the issue of sanitary pads. Where do we put our money? So we need to also improve on the infrastructure. We still have schools where children are studying under trees. We still have, and when it rains, they are not there. They cannot study under these trees. We still have a lot of absenteeism in schools. Teachers doing their businesses and only, you know, being available when they are aware that there is an inspector coming or coming to sign the book and walk away. You know, it is, there's something that has to change.
Okay.
Something has to change. Yeah. Otherwise, short of that, there are so many of those vuras.
Yes.
In the country.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So we shall stick again with the minister. Yes. You happen to be the sector lead here.
Yeah.
So we are talking about a fish vis-a-vis a fishing rod.
Yes.
We are talking about low-hanging fruits in the sectors that can accelerate or catalyze gender equality.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in your comments around PBM Pillar 1, agro-industrialization, agro-production, because many of our women are there. I'm talking about issues of education. You've already talked about the information management system, but largely the issues of education, SCFTA. So what are those things you see that we can do to catalyze so that we give people a fishing rod vis-a-vis giving them fish forever?
I think for me, when we go to engage with community, sometimes we sit and think about their priorities, but I think most of the time, the first issue for most of these people is how do we get out of poverty?
Exactly.
How do we get out of poverty? Majority of them are saying, can we get a mechanism through which we can sell our produce?
Yeah.
Because now we have PDM, you find in a place, because we have classified enterprises, you find in an area there is maize, maybe in that area. You find matoke in the west that in a season people are now selling even at 5,000 a bunch, 10,000 a bunch. You go to Luero where they're doing a place where you find pineapples is rotting. So for me, most of the women are in agriculture and most Ugandans. And with PDM, the production is increasing. In the ministry, we are looking at how do we partner with the Ministry of Agriculture and the private sector. We have quite a number of projects coming through European Union for markets. You've talked about African Continental Free Trade Area, where we have African Union, East Africa Common Market, as they have come up with the how access to the market for women and youth, cross-border trade can be supported. So that is, for me, what we need, number one, to prioritize. Number two, when you interact with most of the women, it's again health. Health is very critical because most of them, women who are pregnant, access to health, maternal health, you are the mama kits. There are people, majority, who cannot afford mama kits. That's why majority of members of parliament have that as a project. Even referrals, majority of members of parliament have ambulances for referral because of mostly maternal health. So we need to handle the issue of health. Number 3, education. Like already Honorable Sarah has articulated, you have articulated, education is key. And I think we need to sit and look around how we previously managed to have people pass. Is it because of teachers not sleeping in school? Is it lack of supervision? Is it the pay? Is it that the ratio, as Sarah is saying? I think that we need to look at, because in government school,
and the feeding program, because
and maybe so we need to look at this critically, because now you see majority of parents trying so hard, even in rural areas. That's why you see the business of education is right deep into villages, because most people will struggle to take their children to the private school because they want quality education. So we have looked at having mass enrollment, but over time we are seeing that the mass enrollment, many dropouts are coming up, and the figures have been articulated severally, even by H.E. the President. So already we recognize that that is an area which requires support. Maybe the last one would be, for me, water. For women and for empowerment of women, water plays a critical role in freeing the time a woman will undertake for another activity of empowerment. And sometimes you go in a place and the line is very long, and the woman has to spend maybe in a day, if they need 3 jerrycans or 4 jerrycans of water, they will spend 2 to 3 hours to get the 4 jerrycans, which time would have been freed to do other activities. So probably on top of economic empowerment, this to me would be critical.
Okay. Thank you. And we have a comment coming in from Wogalo, I think in Ugandai, which I think I will address to Honorable Sarah Opendi. There's a problem of domestic violence against men by women. Women are beating men, and men fear to report, unlike women who have been trained to report. So as a government, what are you doing about it?
Well, I want to encourage the men to report, because really the Domestic Violence Act is in place, and nobody should actually, be violent towards another. But also, most importantly, you will note that currently, not just that side, because I also have cases in my district, and I think there were statistics released that there were some districts, including mine, where men were actually being battered by their wives. But this goes back to what our traditions and cultures were, because previously the women were there to take care of the home, and the men would go and fend for the family. But currently it is the opposite. It is the women actually now fending for the family, while the men have almost resigned. And that is actually partially increasing the domestic violence. But also let us know that the other issue is that as the woman struggles to actually either engage in some economic activity, some men have resigned or resorted to sitting back, and even the food that is, the little food that is the crops that are grown by the woman, the man goes to actually sell so that he can be able to go and drink. And that's why I came up with one of the key drivers of this domestic violence, the violence against men, is actually alcohol. Men in the countryside have resorted to drinking, forgetting their role of actually being the head of the family. And the man needs to complement the wife. You can't abandon the home and really expect the wife now to be the breadwinner, and your work is only to sit and drink. That's why I'd come up with the alcohol control bill intentionally, so that we can not stop people from drinking, but at least have the hours when bars can open and close, so that men can, those who want to drink, go and drink, but also have a time to go home and rest, so that you can have energy to start off tomorrow. So the gentleman from Budadiri, please go and report to the police. Do not be shy about it. This is happening. We don't want to hear that you have been killed in your home. Don't please die in silence. Go and report. And all others like that, like the people of Budadiri.
Okay. Thank you very much. We are now going to have our panelists give us parting shots, each in 2 minutes. Yes?
Before the parting shots, there are some issues that were raised that we need to comment on.
Okay.
Yeah. Briefly, I think the minister has spoken about some of the projects, economic empowerment projects that that the government has put in place for the women to support their growth, like GROW and others, and has also highlighted some of the challenges. I think for me, having some of these projects, Emyoga, GROW, UWEP, PDM, and then making them loan-based for women is a disservice to women, because then it only focuses on some few urban women that can actually have the collateral, like you've stated it, because collateral in the financial institutions, especially some large financial institutions, is land, and very few women actually do own land. Matter of fact, we have very few women who inherit land like other men. So probably we need to have a legislation around women's property inheritance, especially when it comes to land, so that we can have more women moving it from the patriarchal setting of it's only the men because they are the continuers of a lineage, so they are the ones who are mandated to own land. And then let's reduce this burden for the women. You have highlighted, it's interesting how you've highlighted some of these challenges, by the way, that the women face when they are accessing these funds. I think it's important that we think further on how to improve women's economic funding without putting in place loan-based funds to help them, because it ends up helping only the few elites that can access and that can have them. The other thing I wanted to comment about is the issue of people in local governments that was highlighted. Matter of fact, Ministry of Gender and Gender Machinery in local governments have very poor funding. When you go to the local governments, the gender desks, or the desks that are by the DCD or District Community Development Officers, those usually have the least amount of funding. There's a report that was conducted by UN Women and CS BAG that just showed that most local governments allocate only a meager 5% to the gender desks. What can 5% do? Right now we are struggling with Women's Day, and I am appreciative of the fact that Ministry of Gender last time allocated at least 3 million shillings per district towards the celebrations of, International Women's Day. This time round, there is nothing. And the burden, of course, comes back to the woman MP, because the burden eventually comes back to the woman MP. And it's very funny that most area MPs don't even help the woman MP on this, because they keep saying, oh, it is your docket. Meanwhile, the biggest number of supporters and voters are women. And they have so many issues that you have to deal with, and you're supporting their envelope. So that's where sometimes the challenge is. Okay. Now, there is also this whole thing of certificate of gender equity, which is on paper and very beautiful for MDAs. However, we still have ministries that are paying mere lip service to this CGE, because they talk about having a certificate of gender equity, but there are no allocation of resources to mount the pressure or to walk the talk, as the saying always goes. So I wanted to address some of those things. And then finally, yes, the agriculture, thank you. Finally, the agriculture aspect. Of course, we know that the largest bulk of women is in agriculture, But we need to find ways of encouraging women through the different trainings and programs we have to move into agribusiness, you know, agriculture, so that we have agriculture that benefits also women. Because what we have now is that most women are operating money economy, no money economies. Food, hand to mouth. And the largest bulk of men that don't do the biggest bulk of the work in the gardens are the ones enjoying the money. So we need to find ways of encouraging our women to be in the agribusiness, access markets for them, be able to help them support their characters. So my parting shots are...
No,
okay,
not
yet?
You can continue.
No.
You can give your parting shot.
No, please continue.
No, but what I just wanted to say is that the minister, you take note of some of those things.
Yes,
For example, grow is not just elite here, it's very rural based.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are going to begin having our parting shots, and we shall conclude with the minister as she rectifies. We begin here with Pony.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor.
So we have Cassandra not getting anything from Go.
Nothing about the domestic violence case. I think it's important to broaden the conversation around domestic violence beyond just, or even beyond being beaten, the very high amount of beating where someone is bleeding, and also gender-based violence or sexual gender-based violence beyond rape and defilement, because a lot happens that goes unsaid. Slaps, just a mere slap,
emotional,
quotes,
physical,
exactly,
psychological.
So all that needs to come out broadly day and day as a conversation that we need to have. But also when the minister was speaking about agriculture, I kept thinking, do we have market boards, you know, in the country to support these women as well, or just the citizens? That these farmers, yes, have, you know, the women farmers have the produce and they're looking for market. Can the government have such a channel of creating market boards? I'm told they were there some time back before I was born, but I believe they were really very important. But now to you, Professor Sally, and also the viewers, really, my parting shots. The conversation today has been quite interesting, quite inspiring, and I really appreciate UBC for having an intergenerational conversation and having a young voice on this panel. It shows also progress. It gives us hope as young people that we're able to, you know, to take lessons and also carry the mantle and move forward. But for me, what I really want to see moving forward, reflecting on these 30 years of Beijing, or even the International Women's Day, is can the government be able to also prioritize social protection, because it's been a challenge for the women on ground, you know. Having worked before with FIDA Uganda, I've seen firsthand how women face issues with child maintenance, you know, custody and all that. So can we think about a social protection for such women really moving forward, that beyond pursuing their legal cases and custody or child maintenance matters, they're able to still get redress with the government support? But also beyond that, really, in my parting shots is I would like to see young people at the forefront of pushing for gender equality. I am delighted to be a global fellow for gender equality with the NGO CSW in New York. And because of that, we're able to share the information from our grassroots, from our country, both progressive and the challenges that are faced, and we're able to put it on different platforms. So young people really need to know that they have the voice. They need to speak up. They shouldn't shy away from all this. The government is already trying its best, but it can't come to your homestead and spoon feed you. It will take also a lot of our effort. And also, really, in conclusion, is that in whatever we do, we need to deconstruct and know that times are changing. Like Professor Sally had said, what we are working with, all patriarchal norms are moving, you know, a moving priority or something. So we need to really try and deconstruct all these issues of gender inequality with a transformational lens, knowing that we have issues like digital gaps that are in place. We know that a lot of things are changing. Maybe people are not able to access property rights very easily. So we need to look at it holistically and know that what happened in the 20th century might not work in the 21st century, but also it might work in one way or the other. So how are we consolidating all this to move forward, to accelerate action for gender equality? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Flavia, your parting shots too.
Yes, thank you very much. I would love to really laud the government for the progress that we have made so far in attaining gender parity, but like Antonio, sorry? Yes, no, I know, I am very much aware of some of the progress, but I have to highlight the gaps therein as well, so that the ministry and the government can be able to understand how they can get us to where we want, so that we can achieve gender equality eventually. Of course, it will take quite some time, but we understand that there can be some progress that can be made. Like the Secretary General of the UN stated, Antonio, before, he said that achieving gender parity currently is the greatest challenge that we have as a world. It's the greatest challenge we have, but most importantly, violence, achieving a violence-free economy or country against violence against women is such a tall order. So we need to, as a country, be deliberate on reducing the cost of violence against women across board. When I say across board, I mean across the gender-based violence spectrum, because it moves into what Pesh was talking about, the psychological, emotional, etc., physical, etc., etc. We need to invest as a country in allocating resources to reducing and preventing and managing gender-based violence against women across board. So I would really want to wish all women out there a wonderful International Women's Day celebrations. This is a time for us to reflect on the progress, but most importantly, some of us, it's a time to shine a torch on the glaring gaps there are in for women and attaining women's rights in Uganda. I believe together we can all be able to achieve this, and we call upon male engagement to be able to support the moving forward of an attainment of gender parity. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Thank you. Honorable Sarah Pendi, your parting shot.
My parting shot, I've been trying to think of that statement that was made by the gentleman regarding the HIV/AIDS and saying that men are moving away from, you know, with empowered women. And that's why they are getting HIV. Yeah. Yes, he made that statement.
But leave the empowered women, go to the less empowered, catch HIV and bring it back.
So I just want to say that I want to inform Ugandans that HIV/AIDS is still very much around us. And people seem to have forgotten that they can get infected. So they've forgotten about the abstinence, they've forgotten about protection, and, you know, people are just there, you know, doing what they are doing recklessly. So I want to call upon Ugandans, specifically the youths, because we are seeing a higher prevalence of HIV in certain regions. Mbarara, I think, Fort Poto, even Karamoja, now HIV is increasing. So I really want to appeal to people in those regions, please protect yourselves. Most importantly, know that HIV/AIDS is still around us. And there's still no cure. Once you contract HIV, you will be on medication, and taking medicines is not easy. Secondly, we are talking about accelerating action. And for me, in accelerating action, I want to call upon the state to actually undertake its obligations. Because in all this conversation that we have been having here, the state has a key role to actually play. When you look at, you know, areas, focus areas that really concern women, like health, like the education, like water, access to water, even the road, the infrastructure, because once most of the women engage into, you know, economic activities, they will need to take their, whatever they are producing to the markets. So the state must actually undertake its obligations. And in doing so, we shall be empowering the women in those sectors that I've actually talked about. I want to end with a call to every Ugandan. It is hot, it has been shining. You can see that climate change is real. The rains will soon come. It's my humble appeal to every Ugandan, please let us plant trees. Because those people with the trees in their homes, I'm sure did not feel this heat. They would only feel the heat when they move away from their compounds. So let's plant trees around us, wherever we can, so that we can be able to deal with this issue of climate change. Otherwise, I want to wish all Ugandans a happy Women's Day. Of course, this should be a celebration, not for women alone, but let us all join the men, let us join the women in celebrating this day. And I want to call upon the security agencies, because we have seen violence against women, especially opposition women, when they organize the Women's Day. let every person be able to enjoy this Women's Day. Let everybody organize for as long as, you know, you are involved as security to guide them, protect them. Why should we have violence? Tear gassing women who are merely going to celebrate their day. Honorable Flavia is here. I don't think she's so dangerous that if she organizes a Women's Day, she must go and be tear gassed. Please, let us stop this violence, because it is these small little things that actually are creating the Flavias of this world.
Of course.
Yes, this opposition, would not, some of them are as a result of this violence. Yeah, so let's not get into that. Please, let us respect every Ugandan. It's every Ugandan's right to have freedom, to enjoy and celebrate these days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chiwanga.
Thank you so much, Professor. Let me start by appreciating UBC for organizing this discussion. It has been very informative and really very electrifying. I really appreciate it. Then I want to say we have been experiencing pushback against gender equality. So what I'm asking all women and male champions, let's push forward against the pushback. Then I want to wish happy International Women's Day to all women and girls, but also to male champions. So let this International Women's Day serve as a catalyst for collective action, ensuring that every woman and girl can thrive in the world that truly values equality for everybody. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Our Honorable Minister, Secretary Lead.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking our moderator, who has softly and nicely moderated us for this session with a very good knowledge on the subject matter and UBC. I note that maybe to just respond a little to Flavia on proposition that instead of loans we give grants to women.
And the view that GROW is elitist up here.
That GROW is elitist. One is that the architecture of the political economy of any state and the global macroeconomic policy will not allow you to have recurrent expenditure in form of a grant for over 51% of your population or so, and be able to sustain the rest of the sectors and deliver the goods. Two is that it's not only loans that support women's empowerment. There are other crucial sectors that is for everybody. And if you do not have that base of the economy, even the women will not. For instance, if you don't have security, for me who grew up in a place where there was no security, I can't talk about education, I can't talk about a loan. So the base of what should require a government to put in place for first everybody in a country to be able to enjoy the rights. Then the second comes to the vulnerable groups. How many are they? It's not only women who are within the class of vulnerability. We have the youth, we have the persons with disability, we have the older persons. Globally, even the concept of loan, soft loan for women, came from a gentleman who started it, and it caught.
Yunus.
Exactly.
Grameen Bank.
It's not possible. Maybe for grant it can be again a certain category of women whom we could say are really, really below the poverty line that we could think through. But I think PDM has shown us that even the very people we say are poor, when you give them the kind of criteria the president has used, is that you borrow this money, it is at 6%, but you're given 1 year, 2 years of grace period. So you are first using it, you are able to get interest free for the first 1 year, and then you start the repayment in the second year with still with only the 6%. So I think the model that we are having under OWEP and PDM is a model that can support even the very poor. But to go for purpose of saying you go for free grant, even you're going to make people get used to something that is not sustainable. We need a sustainable mechanism. And so we have segment of capital for women. GROW is meant to support those transitioning from PDM. When you get 1 million under PDM or 1 million under WEP, we know you might not be able to get additional money from PDM or Emyoga, but if you get 4 million or 10 million to now support, if you are doing piglets or you're doing any other activity, or you want to now have markets, branding, then you now come to GROW when you have started a business, so that you now get out of the informal sector into the formal sector. So the structure of all the intervention is interlinked. You have the startup capital from PDM, from Emyoga, from OWEP, and then you are able now to get much more money that can drive you into value addition and to expanding your business and formalizing your business. So there are products for different categories of intervention for women, but they are interlinked, and the good thing is the interest rates are within the range of the cheap and affordable capital. So maybe to conclude for me is that we need to involve men. We cannot continue to speak to ourselves as women. And so I still congratulate the men out there who look after their wives, who look after their children. There are also, by the way, single parents, single fathers out there, whom the wives have abandoned children for them, and they're looking after them. I really want to congratulate you. Let us also look at the disentangling the cultural norms that still subjugate women, and so if we are to get empowerment, we need to work with the cultural institutions. That's why in the ministry we have a very strong collaboration, and I want to thank the cultural institution, the kings who are champions for women's empowerment. They have been able to sit on their own and reform their cultures, where issues of female genital mutilation, issues around early marriage, issues around defilement. Even now they give certificates. If you come to marry a girl that is not 18 years and above, they will not give you a certificate. Issues of land, the clan leaders now, if you come to sell land that is owned and you are married, they will not give you permission to sell the land. So I have seen that collaboration with religious institution and cultural institution is paying off. So let us work together, collaborate, and achieve and accelerate action for gender equality.
Thank you very much, our illustrious panel. Very informed and very innovative with so many wonderful ideas. We've been discussing how to accelerate action for gender equality, and you've heard it all from all the different well-experienced women. As we come to the end of this show, I just want to read one quote by Franklin Roosevelt. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. And from the minister, we've heard there are so many categories of vulnerable people. We have women, we've been discussing women today. They are youth, they are the elderly, they are people from marginalized communities or marginalized ethnic groups. May we be intentional at identifying them, and may we be intentional at empowering them, so that we don't just add on to those who already have, but we actually bring on board those who have less. Good night to you all, and happy Women's Day. Thank you.
inspiring Uganda.
International Women's Day is celebrated annually on 8th March. It is a time to reflect on progress made, to call for change and to celebrate acts of courage and determination play by women. On Saturday, 8th March, Uganda will join the rest of the world to commemorate International Women's Day. The national celebrations will be held in Changwanzi district under the theme Accelerate Action for Gender Equality. The President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, will be the chief guest. Join us for the live broadcast to witness outstanding women receive medals in recognition of their achievements and contributions to the country. Happy Women's Day.
Junko. Yo. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret? Haven't you heard of the Parish Development Model, PDM? Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk. I know, it is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving. Junko, I thought I was one of your friends. You are. But you left me behind. I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The Parish Development Model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better.
PDM, my parish, my development, my life. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Appears to be at the forefront of that push after having said beforehand that he didn't want to set the precedent. Was those remarks almost getting the public behind him to do something like that so it won't scare the public, the markets almost? Just to both of you, Pascal, we've got about 30 seconds left for each of you, just on that, yeah.
About that, the people don't really understand what it means because they don't know what is this money coming from. But what is known, and what I could make a conclusion on that, is if Europe steals, I use the word, steals the money, the Russian money, this 200 billion euro, it will be a message and a big warning for all the countries which have invested in Europe and in France particularly. And what is very important regarding Macron is on another side, when he speaks about the freedom and the free of speaking and opponent, I will mention that last week a French television network has been censored on his order. So this guy is able to speak about freedom of thinking and speaking, and on the other side, on the same way, he makes censure on a very popular television network. And so there is no reason for the people to believe in what he says. Even if he says the sun is shining, we will think that it's the moon.
Right. Nicola, the final word to you then on tonight's address.
Yeah, I agree with Pascal. I mean, after this declaration tonight, anything that's going wrong in France will definitely be the fault will be of Vladimir Putin and of Russia. So we could be, and they could try a lot of things, including stealing the assets and trying to get them out to Ukraine. However, I do agree also with Pascal that these are very bad messages sent to a market. But let's not forget that the European economy is in the doldrums, and then sending this message to foreign investors that Europe needs today to kickstart the economy again, that would be quite negative. But indeed, after what Macron said tonight, anything against Russia will go. One just positive element, if you look to the social networks, a lot of people just don't believe the mainstream media hype and believe that what Macron was doing. So I do think that there will definitely be a lot of people within France and the European countries which will be more than ever quite angry and quite mad with people like Macron and the heads of the EU today, which are beating on the drums of war instead of going for peace at a moment where Putin and Trump are speaking of peace.
As always, top-notch analysis from Nicola Merkovich, the president of the French NGO West East, and Pascal Mas joining us, special advisor to the Minister Permanent Representative in Paris of the Republic of Tatarstan for some 3 decades. Gentlemen, for immediate reaction, we much appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Now, the CIA chief has confirmed that the US has halted sharing intelligence data with Ukraine. The move follows a White House suspension of military aid to Kiev. My colleagues Donald Quarter and Rachel Rubel talked through the details a little earlier.
Well, it's official. The CIA is finally pausing military intelligence sharing with Ukraine. And this is something that we heard from the head of the CIA himself in an appearance that he made on Fox News.
Can you tell us anything at all about the intelligence on Ukraine and Russia?
Sure. What President Trump said is he asked for a pause. President Trump had a real question about whether President Zelensky was committed to the peace process. And he said, let's pause. I want to give you a chance to think about that. And you saw the response that President Zelensky put out a statement saying, I'm ready for peace. And I want Donald Trump's leadership to bring about that peace. And so I think on the military front and the intelligence front, the pause that allowed that to happen, I think will go away. And I think we'll work shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine as we have.
So, Don, what does this mean for Kiev?
Well, Washington controls the lion's share of strategic satellites in space, and for the longest time they were used to provide the Ukrainians with critical military intelligence. But with these recent statements from the CIA director, the Ukrainians are scrambling to find an alternative. And also we have to understand that this initial refusal by Vladimir Zelensky to sign off on this rare earth minerals deal that Trump has been trying to push through for the longest time, this is also raising the possibility of basically the United States and Elon Musk specifically cutting the Ukrainians off from the Starlink satellite system, which would be catastrophic for the Ukrainians who are already facing defeat after defeat on the battlefield every day.
So this follows another significant move, of course, that pause in sending military aid to Kiev. What are the chances they will get this back on track?
Well, this all came, of course, after Zelensky's fiasco in the Oval Office last week. That obviously offended Washington and the Trump administration pretty bad. But Trump administration officials seem to be trying to send a signal to Zelensky that it's not yet the end of the world for him.
I think if we can nail down these negotiations and move towards these negotiations and, in fact, put some confidence-building measures on the table, then the president will take a hard look at lifting this pause.
Now, this also comes after Zelensky seems to have budged from his former hardline position on all this, because he's told Donald Trump that he's ready to sign off on this rare earth minerals deal, and he's ready to negotiate, something that the U.S. president was more than happy to hear.
Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, "Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians," he said. "My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you." I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
You know, who knows? This could be a stepping stone to this highly anticipated upcoming meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Now, the Israeli foreign minister has claimed ignorance after it was pointed out to him that Kiev has been renaming streets in honor of a Nazi collaborator. Gideon Saar promised to look into it.
They renamed the streets, even the street, the boulevard going to the Babi Yar, that you know, of course, in the name of Bandera, the one that was responsible for the Babi Yar. And also the monuments of the Red Army, they're taking them down, and they're putting monuments of Bandera, Evich, and Israel about that for years now.
First of all, I didn't know about it. I will check it, and you know that. You probably know that. You probably know that because you asked that. But it's your knowledge. That's clear. But we will check it, and if there is a necessity, we will publish a condemnation. No problem about it. I want to check it, and we'll do that. Yeah.
We reached out to the Israeli Foreign Ministry asking if they followed up on Saar's statement and if Israel plans to issue any condemnation, but so far no response. And yet there is no shortage of evidence. In the last 3 years at least, Ukraine has renamed streets, avenues and squares after figures tied to Nazi crimes like Stepan Bandera, Roman Shuhevich or Petro Dyachenko, all involved in war crimes, Holocaust atrocities or ethnic massacres. The latter was even personally awarded the Iron Cross by Hitler. Hard to believe the top diplomat of a country founded in the aftermath of the Holocaust, representing the Jewish people who were the primary victims of Hitler's genocide, was unaware of this. Or was it just inconvenient to address? Russia's foreign minister's spokesperson has called out Saar's statement, questioning how Israeli embassies, both in Kiev, Ukraine, and Moscow, Russia, could have failed to report these facts back to Jerusalem. The facts are not hidden, not new, and certainly not hard to verify. The Russian ministry even compiled its own materials on the issue, addressed directly to Gideon Saar in English. But is this just negligence or part of a broader pattern? Because while Israel's foreign minister stays unaware or silent on Ukraine's glorification of Nazi-linked figures, voices within Israel's own political circles are openly using Nazi rhetoric. Here's Israel's Vice Speaker of Parliament referring to Palestinians from Gaza as subhuman. Take a listen.
During our meeting with European and Arab states at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, it was obvious that no one wants the Palestinians. Everyone just pushes them into Israel. Why didn't Egypt take them when it made peace with Israel? Because it didn't want them. Egypt knew it would have to deal with subhuman scum who behave like barbarians. Nobody wants them.
Subhuman scum. That's not just dehumanizing language. It's a term directly tied to Nazi racial ideology used to justify mass extermination. And yet, this is an Israeli MP. So when Israel's foreign minister claims ignorance about Ukraine glorifying nationalists with a Nazi-linked past, it raises a much bigger question. Does Israel ignore these things abroad because it allows the same thing, the same rhetoric at home? A dangerous precedent, and still no response from the Israeli Foreign Ministry. We are waiting.
That's our lot for now, but the news team just off camera busy putting together all the latest updates, and there's been a few on this the first week of March, hasn't there? I'll bring them to you in 30. Do join me then.
Эксперты фиксируют стремительный рост происшествий, связанный с травлей в образовательных учреждениях, которые очень часто доводят до суицидов.
Буллинг в отношении Влада был?
Это не прекратилось, просто он перестал об этом говорить.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Дмитрий Хрусталев. Это телеканал Rush Today вас беспокоит. По поводу документального фильма, который делает сейчас наша редакция, фильм посвящен проблеме школьного буллинга.
Я тогда учился в 5-м. К нам в класс прислали новенького. Миша... Конь? Конь. На переменах я подходил к нему сзади, брал его за гриву и кричал: «Лошадка, вперед!» Одна девочка принесла в школу шампунь для лошадей. И мы вместе с этим шампунем пошли голову коню мыть. В раковине туалета. Примерно год над конем угорали. Ну, на досках его рисовали, песенки сочиняли, передразнивали. А потом он куда-то пропал. Говорили, что он перевелся в другую школу, да. А еще я от кого-то слышал, что он попал, ну, в эту, как его? Психушку.
Ваш ребенок провоцировал, вынудил, ну, как вы понимаете, да? То есть он...
Хорошо, но это каким-то образом доказать может? Со слов можно все что угодно сказать. А то, что человек, который, в общем-то, серьезное ранение нанес моему сыну, и потом еще там издевались, насмехались, что это все ерунда, ничего такого страшного не произошло.
Чем отличается конфликт от травли? Конфликт происходит всегда между двумя людьми. Травля происходит всегда между более чем двумя людьми, потому что есть тот, кто травит, есть тот, кого травит, и есть обязательно свидетели и наблюдатели. Если в конфликте может победить и первый, или второй. Травля всегда сильнее тот, кто травит, и всегда слабее жертва. Конфликт рано или поздно завершится и закончится. То травля, она была вчера, она есть сегодня, она будет завтра. И, к сожалению, это такое явление больного коллектива.
всегда был спокойным, тихим ребенком, то есть очень беспроблемным. У нас было всегда открытое с ним доверительное общение. Всегда интересовалась его жизнью, то есть чем он живет, с кем он общается.
Влад к нам пришел во 2 классе. Вот так и познакомилась.
Такой очень творческий ребенок, тихий, спокойный, беспроблемный.
Всегда рисовал, что-то лепил. Ну, ничего плохого я не могу про него сказать, потому что очень добрый, отзывчивый мальчик.
Выбирает себе друзей не всех. Он их выбирает по интересу, по характеру.
У одних ребят есть свободное время, они выходят, конечно же, гулять. А есть ребята, которые любят ходить по музеям, у них мало свободного времени, у них другие увлечения.
Мы не сидели дома, мы посещали какие-то музеи, выставки, поездки у нас различные были. Все свободное время посещала ему.
Мы с Владом поделились в разные команды. Я начала дружить с одними ребятами, а он начал дружить с другой половиной класса.
Он приходил и жаловался, что его одноклассник там обзывает, называет, задирает, как-то травит.
Ну, буллинг в отношении Влада был. Все началось из-за того, что ему понравилась девочка, а девочка ему не ответила взаимностью, его чувство высмеяло. Ну и, естественно, это поддержали в классе, вот та группа. Он считал их до последнего, что они его друзья, но они его высмеивали. То есть буллинг был. Влад ушел в себя, он стал отстраненным от общества.
Но я как мама, я ему говорила: не обращай внимания, не будешь реагировать, он от тебя отстанет.
Они его иногда матом посылали. Они вот что-то вот неприличное ему высказывали, а он просто терпел.
Меня булили за мой естественный вес. Я была такая пухленькая. Был мальчик в классе, и он мне очень нравился. Я пыталась как-то проявить к нему внимание, как-то подружиться с ним, начать общаться. Он такой: нет, ты страшная, ты толстая, как я с тобой буду общаться? Ну и меня это сподвигнуло на жесткое похудение. Похудела очень быстро. Мое состояние было ужасно отвратительно. У меня сбился соответственно, мое здоровье пошатнулось, особенно женское. Вот у меня был период, когда я могла 3 дня не вставать с кровати, потому что мне было уже все равно на свое состояние. То есть была вот прям такая жесткая апатия.
В 6 лет пошла в школу. Все было хорошо, но все началось в 5 классе. Я лежала в больнице, и моя на тот момент лучшая подружка начала под моими постами ВКонтакте писать как бы претензии ко мне.
У меня ребенок попадает в больницу с гастритом, и меня вызывает врач и говорит, что все проблемы идут на нервной почве. Что происходит? И у меня ребенок говорит: я сама не знаю, потом началась истерика. Плачет мне в трубку. Они мне сказали, что я там скучная, плохая.
Это было каждый день. Я каждый день приходила в школу, и я понимала, что сейчас опять что-то произойдет. К примеру, выходим с физкультуры, они мне там вслед кричат какие-то гадости, а я тогда пыталась им отвечать, что вообще было неправильно. Еще была ситуация, то, что мне написал мой одноклассник ВКонтакте, отправил, они, видимо, какую-то группу создали без меня в Вайбере, и эта девочка нашла какую-то фотографию, где какая-то девочка в туалете, и она ее с кабинки сверху снимает. И она это выставила в классную группу и сказала, что это я. Все же там, конечно, начали смеяться, обсуждать это.
Через день я звонила классному руководителю. Я говорю: вы понимаете, я вам отдаю ребенка за вот этот вот забор. В каком психоэмоциональном состоянии вы мне ребенка возвращаете? Что у вас вообще там происходит? Это что, колония какая-то? Вы можете разобраться в своем классе?
Кибербуллингу сложнее Ну, отчасти, наверное, в чем-то сложнее противодействовать, чем школьной травле, в чем-то может быть проще. Кибербуллинг, он опасен тем, что он происходит постоянно, то есть из него невозможно выйти, как если ты вышел из школы, у тебя травля закончилась, поэтому он, конечно, очень быстро приводит к таким негативным последствиям.
Who needs to be destroyed?
You need to spam this person's PMs and wall, as well as their photo comments. The harsher, the better.
The URL.
Look, you need to spam this person using different user accounts for 5 days. I'll send examples of how to do it. Let's discuss the fee.
Okay, how much are you willing to pay?
How many people can you enlist? How many accounts?
3.
Самое, наверное, правильное, что нужно делать в ситуации кибербуллинга, это выходить из этой ситуации. Можно, допустим, сделать какие-то скрины для того, чтобы потом пожаловаться модератору этих социальных сетей или администратору. Постараться никак не вовлекаться в эти беседы и не пользоваться какое-то время социальными сетями.
Why? What did I do to them? What's wrong with me? I feel like I'm alone and no one can help me. I'm so tired.
Сейчас такая тема, которая постоянно мелькает в новостях, это про буллинг, про травлю среди подростков. Я говорю, давайте про эту тему расскажем. И это просто была молниеносная сразу реакция. Да, да, давайте. Во-первых, там идет 3 линии. Это линия жертвы, линия тех, кто буллит, и тех, кто понимает, что что-то не то происходит. Это мы их назвали серыми, что что-то не то происходит, но они ничего не делают с этим. Из разных соображений. И как раз мы в спектакле проговорили, кто из каких соображений может не встревать в это. И мы показываем эту историю. Чем руководствуются те, кто булят? Тоже. Мы прям записываем их мысли, потому что я поняла, что мне нужно детей погрузить в эту тему. Мне нужно, чтобы они до конца прочувствовали, что они танцуют и что они делают. Потому что если ты с этим в жизни не сталкивался, ты не понимаешь тебе, как это протанцовывать. Этот парень, одноклассник, ну то есть как бы это делал на протяжении 2 лет. Мне казалось, что это сейчас они вырастут, станут, возможно, умнее с обеих сторон, и это все закончится. Но это не прекратилось, просто он перестал об этом говорить.
И, видимо, вот это влияние оказали подполые ребят на психику Влада, потому что постоянно это терпеть же нельзя.
I once asked him why he was doing what he did, and he said he thought it was funny.
20 сентября случилось вот это происшествие. Он взял свой сувенирный нож, тоже заглядывал в портфель, и вот он взял нож, да, и нанес 2 удара.
Это была перемена, был завтрак. Я ушла на завтрак. Я прихожу, уже уводят и того мальчика, которого он поранил, и Влада.
Я приехала в школу через полчаса, минут 40, тут же сразу. Конечно, я его не узнала. У него был, понятное дело, шок. И он, наверное, сам не понимал, что произошло.
I don't remember much. As for that moment, I remember how I heard him laugh and how I walked away with my hands shaking. They asked me to give them the knife, and I did.
Мой ребенок уехал с бригадой скорой помощи в психиатрическую больницу. И он там и остался.
I'm so strong. In this world, everything is done through force. Whoever is stronger is right.
Is the clock ticking for Ukraine's former President Zelensky? It certainly appears so. It is hard to imagine him clinging to power after his arrogant meltdown in the Oval Office. Can the Europeans save him? Doubtful. Maybe the Ukrainian people should decide his fate.
mention of Siberia might conjure up images of endless forests, barren steppe, and of course, freezing temperatures. Now, while you might not be wrong if you thought of any of those things, today we hope to show you a different side to Siberia, one where ancient traditions meet cutting-edge innovation.
Были ситуации, где я булила, то есть меня булят, и я такая думаю, так, чтобы меня не обижали, обижу другого. Была девочка, и, можно сказать, мы ее булили за то, за что в свое время булили меня. Ты видела себя, да ты толстая, да вообще не подходи, ты заразная, наверное. О, я вспомнила, что это было. Это еще хуже было даже, чем я рассказала. Я с этой девочкой вообще дружила очень близко. Это как раз был период моих диет, вот это все.